guys, Jesse, I'm back again, and I have a word of sorts for you. Um, okay, so a lot of the Bible talks about what is good to eat for you. In the Old Testament, there was a whole lot of prescriptions about what you could or could not eat, when you could eat it, and how it had to be prepared, right? But when Jesus came along, he kind of said it wasn't what you put into the mouth that defiled the body, but rather what came out of the mouth that showed that you were corrupt, right? Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It's what pours out of us that proves corruption. Okay, so I was thinking along the lines of food, and I wanted to show you like the Lord's table, right? And what goes on the Lord's table. Because if we look at Ezekiel 39 from like 18 to 20, we find that at the Lord's table we eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of princes of the earth, if they were as if they were rams and lambs, goats and bulls, all of the fattened animals from Bashan. Okay, 39. At the sacrifice I am preparing for you, you will eat fat and drink blood till you are drunk. 20. At my table you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind, declares the sovereign Lord. Okay, so this is the Lord's table. This is where we see the mighty men get eaten, right? Horses and their riders. I remember another place that talked about horses and riders. Back in Jeremiah 12, it says, if you have raced with men on foot and they have worn you out, how can you compete with the horses? It's it was like a reminder to show us, like, if we're worn out just fighting amongst each other, how can we compete when we have adversaries that fight through other people? And comparing like a horse to a man, it's really not a fair fight there. The horse is actually a really powerful beast. It's way more muscular, it's faster, and it hits you a whole lot harder. A man cannot compete with a horse. um, so it's to kind of say, when we're fighting with these things, the only way that we can win these things is when we trust in the Lord. And reading through Ezekiel 39:18 to 20, I understand, because princes don't actually go out and fight people. No, they fight people through their armies, right? Very few princes, well, I guess there are some princes that go to war, but they're not put on the ground in battle like regular soldiers. They hold protected positions in the battlefield, right? So, but they always fight through other people, right? Um, who else does it say? Mighty men, mighty men. You know, a man by himself is common, the same as any other man. But a man who garners the support of his community is a mighty man. And he doesn't just get his power from himself, he gets his power from those around him. And so those around him become his forces that elevate him into that position to be a mighty man. So as we can see through these verses, the reason we're not supposed to fight these things is because these are the things that are served at the Lord's table. Now, who do we know that sits at the Lord's table? Well, if we go and we read around Matthew 8 and 11, um, Jesus was talking to the centurion man, the one who had a servant who was ill, and who came to ask Jesus to heal his servant. And he was like, please don't come to my house because I'm not worthy. Just say the word and my servant will be healed. And Jesus was like, I haven't found anyone in Israel with such great faith. And then he tells them, he goes one step further and he says, many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, right? So the Lord's table. We have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And Jesus gets counted in there because Jesus is also, one of God's children, God himself, So Jesus has his seat there at the table there. So we see this, but who else gets their seat there? Because we see, like, when Jesus came, he came to feed the children, and what does he feed the children? But he says healing is the children's bread. So he came to heal the children of God, right? So we go to Mark 27, and we have the woman whose daughter was possessed by demons, and she was real persistent in getting Jesus to heal her daughter, even though he had cast her out, and they basically even called her a dog. Jesus said to her, he said, first let the children eat all they want. He told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs, So he was basically telling her, you're not fit to eat from my table, You're a dog. And she comes back and she says, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. So we find that even the dogs get their place at the table. You understand? They just have to come through the master who's sitting there. So when Jesus is saying in like Matthew 8, how people rush to pick their master, who's your master? Is it Abraham? Is it Isaac? Is it Jacob? Is it Jesus? Who's the master that you're following so that you can have your seat at the Lord's table, And will you be worthy? Because, if you're going to fight all your battles, you're going to be God for yourself, and you're going to have your own table. You're not welcome at his, But when you let God be God, when you let him fight the battles for you, what you find is he prepares a table for you in the presence of your enemies. He's preparing that table, and what's going to be on that table is the enemies that are coming against you. All those mighty men, the princes, those horses and the riders. So this is just something that I was meditating through today, because the church has been saying for a long time, trust God with your troubles, let him fight your battles for you, but a lot of us have trouble like trusting in the Lord, and we don't really see him moving so much. But the problem is that having the Lord intercede for you, you kind of gotta have a relationship with him, and you can't just expect him to come in and do all your dirty work for you, because he's not your servant. He's your father. He's the one who takes care of you. So you gotta like first establish a relationship. One of his biggest pickup lines is, return to me and I'll return to you, And then not only does he say that he'll return to you, but he says, he'll make your enemies cringe before you, and he'll feed you with, honey. He'll give you riches and treasures. Just come back to him, he says, And people that don't realize that God is their God don't have access to these things, and so they don't believe these things, But the thing is, if you can get access, if you have an understanding into like how the kingdom works, if you know God, then he's going to be your defender. He's going to be your protector. He's going to be your provider. He is your source. And you really don't have anything to worry about, because you are like chosen to be his point of contact in the world. So while he's not taking flesh here, though he has in the past, while he's not taking flesh here, he's using your flesh to show his mightiness. He uses the weak to confound the strong, He uses the foolish to confound the wise, all these things, If we come over to Jeremiah 31, we're talking about food here still, right? Starting at line 29, it says, "In those days, people will no longer say, 'The parents have eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge.'" So, I'll keep reading. "Instead, everyone will die for their own sins. Whoever eats sour grapes, their own teeth will be set on edge." Okay, so basically, what he's saying here is there's going to be no more blame shifting. There's going to be no more mounting up on horses to put your guilt somewhere else and have judgment flowing out from your own mouth. But he's saying, if you go down to 33, he says, "I will be their God, and they will be my people." No longer, 34, right? No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, "Know the Lord," because they will all know me, from the least them to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. You know? So you don't even have to worry about the judgment that's coming upon the world when you belong to him, because he's going to forgive you anyways. But if you don't belong to him, be prepared for the judgment. Be prepared to suffer the consequences of your actions, you know. Be prepared to not have any abiding place, you know. You'll seek for people to fall on you, and the people will give you the best advice, you know the Lord, get to know your God. And if you haven't known him, you'll be sitting up there like the people in Zechariah, saying, "I've gotten what I've deserved," But if you know him, he'll cover you. Blessed are those whose sins are covered. But God does this for you because he loves you, because he doesn't want you to be judged by anybody but him, because he even says, "Don't have any gods before me." He's the Lord your God. He will judge you. He'll set you right, and all you got to do is come and bow down and say, "Daddy, take me back. I want to go home." you know. So basically, what I'm saying is the way that things are right now my Lonnie, are not the way that they're always going to be. Come to say hi.
Are you getting on the camping up here? No.
My little Lonnie, right? But the way that things are now, it's not always going to be that way, and it's going to kind of change in an instant, but it's not going to change for everybody. It's only going to change for those who are willing to go. So in like the coming months, I'd like to say years, but I don't know if we have that long. But in the coming months, we're going to see a big revival where a whole bunch of people come back to God. A whole bunch of people are brought back to revival. And then after that, God pours out his spirit on all flesh, on all flesh. There'll be no more preachers and teachers and apostles and evangelists and this and that. Because like he says in 34, in Jeremiah 31:34, no one will say to no longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, "Know the Lord," because they will all know me. From the least of them to the greatest will all know him, which means that he's going to pour out his spirit on all flesh. And when he pours out his spirit on you, if you're not prepared to receive him, it's likely to drive you to madness. You see these people running around here with schizophrenia. You're going to be living a life very similar to that. You're not going to be able to regulate your temperature. You're going to be floating between dimensions. It's going to be a really scary thing for you, and ultimately you'll pass. You'll either pass into the kingdom of God or you'll pass away into the death, into the outer darkness, And the deciding factor is going to be of whether or not you are prepared to receive him when he comes, and knowing how to respond and how to steward the spirit when it gets poured upon you, and to accept him, and and be willing to take instruction And I believe that now is the time that we're supposed to be getting ready for this because it's going to happen soon. You know, the revival first. Those hungry for it are going to reach up and grab it. But the rest of y'all, when he comes, he's coming. You know, and then it's all up to you. You know. I imagine everything will be all right. You know, he is God. He loves us. He's merciful. I'm out of time. Have a good day.